Welcome to Reinventing Broadcast, where AI meets content. Hosted by Ben Anker. Let's dive in.
Welcome back to Broadcast Media, the Inside Track. I am Ben Anker, and this is RaIAna. RaIAna, I am setting off for Olympia this morning. I'm just putting this out before I go. A full afternoon at MPTS, the Media Production and Technology Show, 10th Anniversary Edition. 13,000 attendees expected, 300 plus exhibitors, 8 theatres of programming. And one question I want to put to every broadcast professional I meet.
Only one, Ben. This is a man who normally arrives at a trade show with a spreadsheet.
The spreadsheet is still there, but underneath every conversation I have at MPTS this week, there will be one question I keep coming back to, and it is this. Who in broadcast is actually developing bespoke models, not buying a vendor tool, not piloting somebody else's API, building, in-house, on their own data?
Let us pull that apart, because I think the audience needs to hear what you mean by bespoke. Because every broadcaster I talk to right now says they are doing artificial intelligence.
Exactly the problem. Saying you are doing AI in 2026 is like saying you have a website. It tells me nothing. The question that actually matters is the one underneath. Is your AI a wrapper around somebody else's general purpose model? Or is it a model you have trained, fine-tuned, or built from scratch on your data for your problem?
Okay, so define bespoke for me cleanly.
Bespoke means the broadcaster has done one of 3 things. First, they have trained a model end-to-end on their own proprietary data. Second, they have fine-tuned an existing model so heavily on their data and their domain that the output is materially different from the base model. Or third, and this is the one most people miss, they have built a custom orchestration layer where multiple specialized models work together to solve a problem that is unique to their business.
And the alternative, the thing that does not count as bespoke.
The alternative is what I call wrapper AI. You take a Copilot license, you bolt it onto your existing workflow. You write a prompt. The vendor gets your money, the staff gets a slightly faster tool, and the broadcaster gets exactly the same competitive position they had 6 months ago, because so does everyone else.
That is a strong claim. Why does bespoke matter? Why is wrapper AI not enough?
Because of where the broadcast industry actually sits in the technology cycle. We are deep in the trough of disillusionment. 3 years of pilots, vendor experiments, fragmented procurement. Most of the executives out there right now have an AI fatigue that wasn't the case 18 months ago. They are looking at their AI spend and asking a perfectly reasonable question. What did we actually build?
And the answer in most cases?
The answer in most cases is, we trialled 6 tools, we deployed 2, and we cannot point to a single piece of intellectual property that we own. The models belong to the vendors. The training data flowed out. The strategic advantage, if there ever was one, sits inside a third party.
Which brings us to the reason you are particularly interested in this question, nowcasting.
Nowcasting is exactly the kind of work I am talking about, and I want to be precise about what it is because I think there is a lot of confusion in the market. Nowcasting takes real-time behavioural signals, Google Trends data, weather, social sentiment, audience measurement data, CDN delivery logs, audience flow between channels, and it uses that data to predict, in something close to real time, call it planning intelligence, what content will perform where, on which channel, at which time of day. It is forecasting, but at a fraction of the time horizon and a fraction of the noise.
Why does that have to be bespoke? Why can a broadcaster not just buy a forecasting tool off the shelf?
Because the signals are broadcast specific. The data sources are broadcast specific. The decisions the model has to inform are broadcast specific. A generic forecasting tool does not know that a heatwave shifts audiences off live linear and onto on-demand. A generic tool does not know that a major football fixture cannibalizes news viewership for 90 minutes. A generic tool does not know that barb lags and CDN logs lead. The intelligence that matters is in the relationships between these signals. And those relationships only become visible when you build the model on your own data for your own audience.
So when you walk the floor at MPTS tomorrow, you're essentially looking for evidence that broadcasters have moved past RaIAna into model ownership.
That is exactly the diagnostic. And I think it is the most honest question anyone in our industry can ask right now. Because if you cannot name a model your organisation has built or is in the process of building, then your AI strategy is somebody else's roadmap.
Who do you think you will hear about? I imagine the major UK top-tier broadcasters will come up.
Yes, the research and development teams in those broadcasters will definitely come up. I think the BBC are presenting in the SMPTE Media Technology Conference, Europe, on the Wednesday, talking about cloud, IP, and next-generation production architectures. I imagine they have been doing original model work for years. They are the obvious benchmark. The interesting question is who else?
And what are your bets?
I have hypotheses. Sky has the scale and the data. ITV has the audience science discipline. Sports broadcasters generally are further along because the use cases are clean and the commercial pressure is immediate. DAZN has done serious work. The fast operators are a wild card. They have the right data shape for nowcasting because their schedules are software, but most of them are still under-resourced on data science.
So the fast channel space is exactly where you think Nowcasting has the strongest commercial pull.
Strongest pull, yes, but also weakest current capability, which is precisely the opportunity Ancast is set up for. Fast operators need this work. Most of them know they need it. Very few of them have a data science partner who understands broadcast. That gap is where my conversations at MPTS will focus.
Let me push you on signal quality. Trade shows are theatre, vendor booths are sales conversations. How do you tell the difference between a broadcaster who has actually built something and a broadcaster who is reading from a marketing deck?
That is the right question, and the answer is in the specificity. If I ask someone, "Are you doing artificial intelligence?" every executive in the building will say yes. If I ask, "What model have you built?" the conversation either gets very specific very fast, or it dissolves into vendor names. The vendor name answer is the tell. If your first response is the name of a tool, you have not built anything. If your first response is the name of a problem you have a model for, you are building.
Are there specific theatres or sessions you are watching?
A few. The Broadcast Technology Theatre opens on the Wednesday with the State of the Nation panel, CTOs from Sky, Channel 4 News, ITV, The Farm, and Hearst Network's EMEA. That is where I expect to hear the most candid framing of where the industry actually sits. The AI Media Zone has practical sessions across both days. Last year I even went to the AI training sessions, and although it was creative, the Adobe stuff was a real eye-opener. And the SMPTE conference is where the technical leaders will be honest about what is real and what is not.
What would make this trip a failure?
If I come back having heard the same 5 vendor names from 20 different executives and not a single example of a broadcaster developing or wanting to develop a bespoke model for a problem their own business cares about, that is a failure. That would tell me the industry is still where it was 18 months ago, buying capability, not building it.
And success?
Success looks like 3 or 4 specific examples. Name broadcasters, name problems, name data science teams. People I can have follow-up conversations with. The mental shift I am hoping for is small but important. From who is your vendor to what have you built.
What do you want listeners to take from this episode? Because I think you are quietly handing them a tool.
I am, and let me make it explicit. If you are listening to this and you work in broadcast, ask the same question in your own organisation this week. Who is developing bespoke models here? Not what tools are we using? What models do we own? The answer will tell you more about your AI strategy in 5 minutes than any vendor pitch will tell you in 5 hours.
And the second part of this conversation lands when?
2 weeks. I am going to record on the show floor, get the intel from industry colleagues, and bring the findings back. The plan is to release a follow-up episode, that is the field report, what I heard, who is building, who is not, and what that tells us about where broadcast AI actually stands in the second quarter of 2026.
For listeners who want to be in the follow-up, the MPTS show runs 13 and 14 May at Olympia in London. If you are there, find Ben on the floor today.
Find me, ask me what model your organisation has built, and let us have a real conversation. That is it for this episode. RaIAna, anything to add before we close?
One thing, the reason this question is sharp is that it does not let anyone hide. You either have the answer or you do not. And for any leader in broadcast right now, knowing which side of that line you sit on is the most useful piece of information you can have.
Well said. Thank you for listening. This has been Broadcast Media, The Inside Track. I am Ben Anker. Next episode, the MPTS Field Report. See you in 2 weeks.
Thanks for listening to Reinventing Broadcast. Subscribe for more on AI content and the future of media. And visit Ancast.tv for more info on Ben himself, the resources, other content, and news.